Summertime for our family means a lot of travel, and yes, most of the time Tucker does get to tag along. We spend a lot of time in our RV, and that means lots of walks and activities with Tuck. Before we head out, we bathe Tucker with Coat Defense's Sensitive Skin Shampoo. It smells so fresh without being loaded down with chemicals, and his coat stays really soft. We always make sure to pack the Coat Defense Daily Preventative Powder as well. This powder that we just sprinkle on his coat and paws acts like a dry shampoo and works to eliminate odor and repel dirt. Tucker's friends at Coat Defense are offering you 15% off to try any of their awesome products. You can visit coatdefense.com and use the code MOMMA15 at checkout. This episode is brought to you in partnership with Sheppard Pratt, the nation's largest private nonprofit provider of adolescent mental health, substance use, special education, developmental disability, and social services. Noah Lyles is the face of American track and field and set to make history at the Olympics. It is no surprise the 26-year-old track star has been so successful. Just wait till you meet his mama. Not only was she an All-American herself, she is joy personified and such an encourager. Noah struggled with asthma as a child, and both he and his mom are passionate about sharing their personal challenges with mental health during their athletic journeys. You'll cheer even harder for Noah and Team USA after listening to this interview. Be sure to stay tuned after my conversation with Keisha to hear a special interview that every mom needs to hear with Dr. Harsh Trivedi, child psychiatrist and CEO of Sheppard Pratt. So I can see where his really fun spirit comes from. It is from his mama.
Yeah, they have a joke in the family, and they're like, you and Noah are so much alike that you even get sick together.
Oh my goodness. Yeah. What are some of those personality traits that you would say Noah got from his mama?
So we're both extroverts. We both love the arts. We are both always thinking outside the box. We're both very, very tenacious. We have a lot of perseverance. And when we get tired, we don't want to talk to anybody. It's like we have nothing left. It's like it's either 0 or 100. There's like no in between. And we love people, but it's kind of like we're like, we love people as a whole, but it's kind of like we have a hard time trusting people individually. So I think that's something that we're both pretty self-aware about. We want to make a difference in the world, and so those are some of our similar traits.
Yeah, all kinds of good things. Now you're the mother of 2 boys, is that right?
Yeah, so we are actually a blended family. We are a family of 7 kids.
Oh my goodness.
And I know. So my first marriage, I was married to Noah and Josephus's dad, and I also have a daughter from that marriage named Abby. And she is working on her master's in chemistry. She has only 2 classes left. And then my hubby and I, with my second marriage, he was a widower. So his wife passed away, and he had 4 boys. So we have 6 boys and 1 girl, and she's the youngest.
Oh, wow. Oh my goodness. What an interesting family. So you raised your boys when they were younger, Noah and his brother, in Virginia. Is that correct?
So I feel like we lived everywhere. They were born in Gainesville, Florida, and we lived there until they were about probably 7 or 8. And then we relocated to Charlotte, North Carolina. We lived there for 5 years. And then we relocated to the DC, Maryland, Virginia area because that's when I got divorced and I moved back to my hometown, which is Washington, DC. Florida is my happy place. It has a couple of things I wish I could change, but I love the weather. I love the people. And like, I'm just happy in Florida.
That's where you need to be then.
Yes.
So just tell me a little bit about those early years with Noah. What would you say looking back that you saw in him as a toddler or a young boy, that those traits that really kind of even apply now to his career path and, really striving to be an elite athlete? What was it about this kid that was different than the rest?
So since he was my first, I didn't know he was different than the rest. It's really interesting because his early years were very sad because he had asthma. So when you have asthma, you really can't do as much as you want to. Like every 6 weeks, we were in the emergency room or the doctor's office with some type of nebulizer or breathing treatment or a steroid. and we spent a lot of time just trying to keep him healthy. But when he was healthy, he had a lot of energy. So we had a trampoline in our backyard because our house was like the community house because we had two boys because they're only 12 months apart, like almost to the minute, he and Josephus.
Oh,
So
wow.
everybody knew if you knocked on our door, maybe one might not want to play, but the other one would want to play. And so we had a trampoline, we had a basketball, hoop in our front yard. I would leave the garage door open and leave a freezer full of popsicles so that they wouldn't get because they won't drink water, kids won't, but they'll suck on a popsicle. Just I remember him having a lot of energy. So we would go to the indoor playground at the mall because it was so hot in Florida. You can't go to the outdoor playground. So they had this indoor playground, and you know how they have those tubes where you can get in and little kids slide down them?
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, all the other little kids would slide down them, but Noah would see the tube and go, oh, let me see if I could climb the outside of it. And so he would literally climb the outside. And I'm like, Noah, that's not. And other parents are looking at me like, are you really going to let your kid do this? Because he thought it was so boring to slide inside. He's like, everybody could do that. Why don't you try to climb the outside? And so I really had to learn as a parent how to raise this kid where I gave him boundaries, but I didn't kill his spirit.
Mm. Yeah,
Yeah.
and I think that that is, the magic that most moms are looking for. How would you say, looking back, that you did that?
So in the beginning, we homeschooled because I felt like traditional schooling would kind of kill his spirit. We homeschooled until the middle of second grade, and then I was just burnt out. I couldn't take it anymore. Because when you homeschool, you're the mom, the doctor, the teacher, the principal, the bus driver,
A
everything.
lot, yeah.
Yes. But in homeschooling, we don't do school at home. We made it very fun. So when it's time to learn how to tell time, we would go out into the driveway and I would use sidewalk chalk and draw a big clock. And then I would say, okay, it's 6 o'clock. Put your body so that the clock says 6 o'clock. And so he will put, you lay on the ground and you have your hands up here, your feet down there, or 2 o'clock. So I tried to incorporate a lot of fun or during bedtime because bedtime was really huge at our house. So sometimes at bedtime, we tuck everybody in and then wait like 10 minutes and then run in the rooms and flick on the lights and say, oh, let's go for ice cream. And everybody piles in the car and you go for ice cream in your pajamas and you take pictures. So I just tried to do a lot of really fun things to make life very exciting and fun.
It sounds like you even made, like, learning active for him because he did have all of this energy, and that's kind of what he needed to speak to him.
Yes. So I believe that the whole world is our classroom. So I'm constantly teaching. And I didn't realize until I got older that I'm like a teacher. You know how some people have the profession of teaching, but I feel like I am a teacher. I don't know if that makes sense or not
No, it
because
does.
I'm an advocate reader and I love to learn. And so I'm always teaching.
So tell me about the athleticism. When did you notice that, or were you the kind of mom that signed him up for everything, or it more evolved organically?
So we were always athletic because his dad ran for Adidas and his dad gold medal on the 95 World Championship team. And then we both were like, I was a 10-time All-American at Seton Hall, which was my alma mater. And his dad was also like an 8-time All-American. So we were really, really active. We got married as soon as we graduated from college and we moved to Florida. We were so young. I don't know what we were thinking. But and then we started having kids 3 years later. So Noah was born when I was 25. And we would rollerblade and we rode bikes and we would go to the park. Like I was just a really active mom. I think it was just part of our family. I didn't think about it as something different because we just all had a lot of energy. And then when I think Noah turned like 5 or 6, he did T-ball because that's the only thing you could really sign up for. And I think he did soccer, he and his brother. And they liked sports. And since we were homeschooling, it was a great way to socialize.
Yeah.
So anything that they wanted to do, I let them sign up for. We signed them up for music, art, hip hop dance, gymnastics, soccer, t-ball, swimming, track. We did like every sport except football.
You really did do it all. So
Yeah.
was it track where you stopped? Because you were a runner as well as an All American,
Mhm.
that was your sport. So did you kind of push him toward that at all, or it naturally evolved?
No, I didn't. It naturally evolved. I thought they were going to do soccer. They really love soccer and they loved swimming. And then I think one summer he was doing track. I think he was like 10 years old, and he made it to what's called the East Coast Invitational, which is a really competitive meet, and he won the high jump. And it was like his first year doing high jump. I was like, no, that's great. You won? Because I had competed in that meet when I was in high school, and I could never win it. I would make it to the finals, and I would place in like the top 5 or 4, but I could never win it. And I was like, wow, Noah, that's really impressive. I'm so proud of you. So then he went on to the Junior Olympics the next year in the high jump, and he was so funny. He goes, I think he got ninth. And so when the competition's over, he comes over. He's like, "Okay, Mom, I'm done." And I said, "You're done? Like you didn't make the final?" He's like, "No, I'll make it next year. Can we go eat?" And I was like, "Yeah, okay."
I love that. That's exactly the way that you want them to react to disappointments in life, right?
Yeah, because he was like, okay, I just tried to make it fun. It wasn't. It breaks my heart to see parents like really, really pushing their kids,
Mhm.
because that's not what it's supposed to be about. It's supposed to be fun, and you meet friends, and you just learn so many soft skills, like teamwork and perseverance and being comfortable with being uncomfortable. And yeah, so I hate it when I see parents just really taking the fun out of sports.
Yeah, for sure. Was it high school before you realized how seriously that he was going to hone in on track and that sport specifically and just how talented he was in that?
Yeah, I think it was eighth grade. It was the summer of eighth grade going into ninth grade. So it was 2012, and he and his brother had both made the finals at the Junior Olympics, which was at Bowie State University in Maryland. And the day of the finals was also the same day as the opening ceremonies for the 2012 Olympics. And they're in their hotel room, and Josephus goes, "Bruh, we can make the 2016 Olympic team." And Noah's like, "What are you talking about?" He's like, "Yeah, like we could just drop 1 second off our time every year. We're already this fast. Like if we do the math and do this, da 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 da." And Noah was like, "Okay, okay." So they came to me after this with this huge idea. I think they had both placed like second and third at the Junior Olympics in their age group for that year. And they're like, "Mom, we want to make the 2016 Olympic team." And I said, "You mean the 2020 Olympic team?" And they're like, "No, no, no, 2016." And I said, "But you're only going to be high schoolers, like senior and high schoolers." They're like, "Yeah, we know." And I said, "Well, you know, I've been around this sport for a long time and I know what it takes. I think you should shoot for 2020." And I had to go back and repent and apologize because I was like, oh my gosh, like you guys have a vision and I just killed your vision. So please forgive me. But I will do this. If this is really your dream and you want to do it, I will do everything I can to make it possible for you and we will go for it. And so we did. We went for it. Josephus got hurt like, 4 weeks before the 2016 Olympic trial. So he didn't get to try out. But Noah went on, and Noah missed it by one spot.
I love just that basics though of your reaction to them having a big dream because I think so many times our natural inclination as parents is to squash the dream or to be like, okay, that's not very realistic. And not that you're not supporting them and other things or whatever, but you were like, okay, let's do what it takes. Let's see if we can get there. You could have so easily said, no, that's not going to work.
Like, so one of my prayers when my kids were little was that I was like, God, can you please like show me what my children's gifts are so that I can help cultivate them? Because I know so many adults who are still trying to figure out what their purpose is and what their gift is. And I was thinking, like, what if we knew what our kids' gifts were when they were young? And as parents, we did everything we could to help them achieve their dream, how much further along they would be. And so when they came to me with this dream, that's why I had to like repent because I was like, oh my gosh, like this is what I prayed for. And now I'm saying, no, this isn't realistic. And I just felt so bad that I had done that to them. But, they forgave me. They're sweet kids. So,
It ended up working out okay. I love that though. And that's really kind of, the common thread and the theme that I see in this podcast with moms of people who have excelled in whatever platform they've been given is that cheerleader mom behind them just saying, okay, you want to do it? Let's figure it out, and you definitely are the epitome of that.
yeah, it was so sweet because when they came to me with this dream, I had just gotten divorced, and so we were really struggling. Like, we went from being, middle class, owning investment properties, living in homes we had built, to qualifying for food stamps, having our lights shut off, having our water shut off. But I was like, okay, like, I am going to do everything I can to make this dream come true. And so many people believed in us. And we did GoFundMe's, and we had people donate shoes and just whatever they needed. One of their high school coach, he would actually take them to practice for me sometimes if I had to work and I couldn't take them to practice, because I would try to work through lunch so that I could show up, get off early so I could show up to their practices, just to let them know that I'm still here to support you. And so when I couldn't be there physically, their high school coach did so much. And unfortunately, he just passed away a few weeks ago.
I'm so glad that he's gotten to see your boys do some pretty incredible things, though. So
He
that's
has. He
yeah.
has.
So this grit and this determination that it just has to take to become an elite athlete at the level that Noah has achieved, was that always natural in him?
It had to be there because you can't really teach that. It's like an X factor. But
Mm-hmm.
I do think the perseverance, yeah, so I guess so. The perseverance has always been there because of the asthma. So, like, when he couldn't sleep because he was struggling with asthma in the middle of the night, and I would hold him up so he could breathe, and I would just tell him, like, I know this is a really hard time right now, but your life is not going to always be like this. We're going to figure this out. And we did an adenoidectomy, a tonsillectomy. I feel like we did everything.
Mm-hmm.
And eventually, he still has asthma, but it's much, it's better maintained, and his immune system is stronger. And so I think him experiencing all of that adversity when he was young and coming out on the other side, he has learned that, yeah, things may be hard sometimes, but it's just a season. It's not going to last.
Right. When you were up all those nights with this young child who was experiencing asthma and you had the nebulizer, the whole thing, would you ever in your wildest dreams have thought, this is an Olympic athlete I'm sitting here mothering?
No. No, I just
Mm-hmm.
wanted him to be the best Noah we could make him out to be, because he also had ADD, still does. He also has dyslexia. So I told him, I actually wrote an article for the Charlotte Observer when he first got diagnosed with ADD, and he didn't even know it because I didn't tell him. So Josephus told him one day, he was like, dude, you have ADD. He's like, I don't have ADD. What's ADD? But I said, okay, I'm going to tell you what ADD is. I said, it's like this superpower, because you think outside the box and you're very creative and you're usually pretty good with young kids, but every superpower has a weakness. And so the weakness is that it's really hard for you to sit still. It's hard to focus sometimes. Traditional schooling can be challenging. But what we're going to do is give you all the tools and all the resources to help you make your weakness stronger. And in doing that, we're going to help you be the best Noah you can be.
I love that. I'm going to start calling you anytime I tend to go negative or there's a bad situation, because you're going to be able to like paint this bright light and say, okay, it may look like this, but it's actually this. That is a gift.
I never thought about it like that.
As you guys know, I am a huge fan of Barefaced and have been using their skincare consistently for about a year now. My go-to this summer is the Summer Staples Toning Pads Liquid Gold, which is their vitamin C and SPF. I recently learned that vitamin C can make your sunscreen more effective, and that's why this summer I am making sure I include it in my everyday routine. Some vitamin Cs can be a little drying, but Barefaced is a microemulsion with coconut esters, so it is extremely hydrating. And of course, I never go without my SPF. If you're not wearing a daily SPF, investing in skincare is kind of a waste. My personal favorite is the tinted SPF. It is a universal tint derived from iron oxides and not only provides a natural looking glow, but also serves as an extra defense against those dark spots. These products are your summer skincare staples, ensuring your skin stays healthy, nourished, and protected. You can get 15% off your first purchase of summer staples using the code MOMMA15 at barefaced.com. One of the things that is, I think, really special about Noah's story, when you know more about his background and know that he's overcome a lot when it comes to the health issues, asthma and all of that, and then to think the one thing that a doctor might have told him not to do would have been to overexert himself or run too hard, and that's the one thing, that he's out there just a rock star with, is a pretty amazing story. But he's also been really open about the struggles mentally, the pressure he puts on himself, that striving for perfection.
Mm.
Let's talk about the mom side of your concerns in watching him navigate all of that as an Olympic athlete.
Yes. So I am a huge proponent of mental health because I struggle with clinical depression, but I didn't even know what it was until like I was 28. Um, and I had just given birth to my daughter. So our kids were born. We had three under three. So we had a newborn, a 1 year, and a 2 year old. It only takes 9 months, and I don't recommend it. So, because people go, "How did that happen?"
Yeah,
Only
you
takes
figured
nine
it
months.
out.
And I was like allergic to every contraceptive known to man.
Mm,
So that's how we
that
ended
didn't
up
help.
with three under three. But I was in the hospital one day and I was just crying, crying, crying. I have been in and out the hospital, and the doctor comes in and he's like, "You have clinical depression." And I'm like, "What is he talking about?" And I went home that night and I told my now husband then, I said, "I don't know what that doctor is talking about. Like, I graduated Seton Hall in 3.5 years. I was on the dean's list. I've been in gifted and talented. What is he talking about?" And he said, "Keisha, the doctor didn't say you were stupid. He said you had depression." And I was like, "Oh yeah." For some reason, that made me feel better. I don't know why. But I'm learning everything I could about depression, working on myself, having a therapist, being on medication. I learned that one of the things is that it can be hereditary. And so I talked to my kids about it the whole time when they were growing up. I noticed that they had symptoms of anxiety. I also learned that ADD and depression and anxiety can kind of go hand in hand.
Mhm.
And so it was like, it's funny. My daughter says we have three topics we always talk about in our house. One is what's going on politically. Like, I want my kids to be aware of that. America's not the only country in the world; it's a whole world out there that we need to pay attention to. And the other one is psychology, and then the other one is track. So we always talk about psychology and the importance of mental health. And so I try to take away the stigma. So when Noah went through his bout with depression, it was during COVID, and I went to visit him. He was living in Florida, I was living in Maryland. There was no light in his eyes. And I called his therapist and I said, "This is what I'm seeing. This is what I'm concerned about. I think we need to talk to a doctor about medication." And she said, "Yeah, I agree." So I talked to Noah, and it was a really hard decision because even though you try to take the stigma away, I think there's still stigma attached to it. Like, you just want to be strong enough to not need the medicine.
Mm.
And I tell people it is no different from diabetes. If you need insulin, you need insulin. And with clinical depression, if you need dopamine or serotonin or norepinephrine because your brain is not absorbing those feel good hormones, then you need the medication. And you might not need it forever, but you might need it for a little while. So he took it for like 3 months and he continued to work with his therapist, and he's doing so much better. But I'm so proud of him for being willing to do that, because for me, I was ignorant. I didn't know anything about it. I started medication so much later, and I've been on it now for over 20 years. But it probably could have been, if it had been addressed at an earlier age, I probably wouldn't have needed the medication for as long as I do. But I thank God it's there.
Exactly. Yeah. You think there's
Yes.
an extra pressure to, well, one, he's put on himself, but then also of people who are following along on his journey, but the pressure to be the best in the world. I know that's his goal, but is that a whole heightened level of anxiety and depression that he probably deals with as an Olympic athlete?
Yeah, I think, first of all, I think he puts the pressure on himself because it doesn't come from us. Because I don't care if you never run track again, I still adore you. Um, I think he does a really good job of drowning out the crowd. Like the other day, I saw him post something on Twitter and he said, "Twitter, y'all are too negative. I'm out." And
Mm.
I was like, "Oh." And so I called him. I'm like, Twitter's been negative forever. What happened?
What changed?
Yeah, he's like, oh, they were talking about one of my friends. I'm like, oh, so they can talk about you, but when they start talking about one of your friends, now it's negative. I think one thing about him is that if he does not win, he doesn't get down. He's like, okay, he'll go to his coach. He'll say, what do I need to work on so that that doesn't happen again? And he'll train even harder, or he'll talk to, because he has three therapists. He has a sports psychologist, a trauma therapist, and a family therapist. And so he does a really good job with leaning on his resources when he needs help. And so, yes, to answer your question, there is a lot of pressure. It's definitely heightened around this time of year, but we try to stay grounded. And I just remind him at the end of the day, we have a roof over our head and we have food on the table, and we are more blessed than 90% of the world.
Amen. That's so, so true. That's so interesting. The part, though, about having, I mean, it wouldn't be surprising to have a therapist, someone, doing what he's doing and needing that. But to have three, that alone shows the importance that you guys as a family have placed on Noah's mental well being through this journey.
Yeah, I guess you're right. I never looked at it like that. I just wish it was more normal for people. You know how it's normal for you to have a primary care physician and a gynecologist and an ophthalmologist,
Mhm.
and nobody would go, oh, you really place a lot of importance on taking care of your body. I just wish that we looked at mental health the same way.
Yeah, that's so true. That's true. Yeah,
Yeah.
I noticed one of the things and watching the documentary, which is so good, so
Thank
well done, I loved
you.
it, but he mentioned that the sports psychologist that he has, the lady, I can't remember her name, she was awesome,
Diana.
but she's been with him since he was a sophomore in high school, so you guys knew early on that that was just as important as his physical health.
So, fun fact, his sports psychologist used to be my sports psychologist when I ran for Seton Hall, because she used to teach sports psychology at the university. So I had lost contact with her for like 20 years, and I looked her up and I reconnected. She's like, of course I remember you. And I told her about these two sons I had and asked would she work with them, because in her class she taught us that a lot of times when you're an athlete or you're a musician or you're, let's say, a doctor, you think that is your identity
Mm,
and you lose who you are as a person. And so if you get injured in a sport, God forbid, you don't know who you are. And that's why you see a lot of retired athletes either gambling or getting in trouble because they've lost their identity. I told Noah, if this is, something that you're going to want to pursue, then I really want you to work with a sports psychologist. And she was willing to work with him. For me, the biggest concern that I have for Noah is after all the lights and the cameras are gone, because they've been around for so long and so much a part of his formative years, is that you have to know who you are. And I went through it. And my career was nowhere on his level. But there was nobody writing articles when I was changing diapers and wiping noses, clearing up diaper rashes.
Today Show wasn't calling you then, were they?
Yes, yes. So that was really hard for me. And, when you're a stay at home mom, you don't get a paycheck. And it sounds kind of corny, but a paycheck is like, at least somebody sees my work every
Yes,
2 weeks and I
you
get
feel
paid.
valued, right?
Yes.
A paycheck equals your value, and you don't get that as a mama.
No, you don't. And I think as a mom, you don't see the fruit of your labor until so many years later. And I think we're so hard on moms. It's like if you're a stay-at-home mom, then you're putting too much, you're a helicopter parent. If you're a working mom, then you're neglecting your kids. There's no one size fits all. It's just so hard to be a mom.
Yeah, no, that's so true. You mentioned how when Noah doesn't win a race, what happens? I know what that is. That's his BBA, right? His bounce back ability that I've heard you talk about, which, oh my goodness, do you have t-shirts made in that? You should just be wearing one all the time. It's great.
Somebody else said that. Let me write that down. A lot of people like that. Yeah. Our our bounce back ability. We all need it because I always say life does life for everybody. And I think, and we have a nonprofit, Lyle's Brothers Sports Foundation,
Hmm.
and that's what we try to promote to the youth. I actually was just talking to Noah and my husband this morning because first of all, I love all the kids that run because I've known them for so long. And so I call them if they didn't make the team and I check on them. Oh, and it just breaks my heart. And they are grieving, the ones that didn't make the Olympic team. And they don't realize that they're grieving because as athletes, you're taught to push your body to the limit and ignore pain. But there's a balance to that, and they don't know the balance. And so now that they're grieving, one of the young ladies said, "Oh, Miss Keisha, I'm not going to cry while I'm talking to you because I'm so embarrassed." And I said, "Well, why would you not cry? Haven't you had this dream for over 10 years? And you didn't make the team, and you're only giving yourself a week to try to get over it? Like, I think that's so unrealistic." So what I'm going to do is contact our trauma therapist and do a group session with some of the athletes who didn't make it so that they can learn to honor their bodies and what does the grieving process look like. And it's okay to grieve. There's nothing wrong with it. You're human.
That the word grief has such a connotation that it truly has to be associated with death or something. But like you said, that's the loss of a dream. You know,
Yes.
think about the dedication that this level of, athletes put into that. So absolutely they're going to grieve for sure.
Yeah.
Tell me about some of the fun opportunities that you've had personally on this journey. I mean, I saw a video of you with Snoop Dogg. Like, what is that?
Okay. So I think my favorite opportunity I've had was I've dined twice with the Prince of Monaco.
Oh my goodness.
And so when you are really high in track and field, we have this award called World Athlete of the Year, and you get invited to the palace and you have dinner in his castle and he's there and he greets you and he talks to you and it's very intimate. I think it's like maybe 15 people get invited. And he was just so down to earth. Prince Albert, he's actually Grace Kelly's son,
Yes.
the actress. And he had us in his living room, and he explained to me the art on the walls, and he just shared his heart. And we started talking about mental health because that's a passion of mine. And one thing he said to me that really resonated, and I never forgot it. He said, "I wish people knew that I have issues too. Like
Oh.
I go through life too."
Mhm.
And back then, oh, I'm getting teary eyed, so please forgive me. Like I heard it, but now I hear it because now that we're on this level, that's how I feel. I feel like people see us on Netflix and they see us on TV and they're like, "Oh, you live this perfect life. You live this glamorous life." And it's like, girl, I'm over here battling COVID for the
Yeah.
last 10
Yeah.
days. Like, and you saw me, with no makeup. And sometimes it's like, oh, it's so good not to have to put on makeup and lashes and no cameras. And, I just think people think when you reach a certain level of fame that life doesn't affect you the same way, but life does life for everybody. So Prince of Monaco, that was fun. Snoop Dogg was fun. That was a lot of fun. He was hilarious. I was honest. I said, "Snoop, I only know one song that you made." And he was like, "What, Miss Keisha?" I said, "Yeah." I said, "And you don't have to call me Miss Keisha because we're the same age." And he said, "Yeah, but you're definitely a mama. So I got to call you Miss Keisha." And I said, "But I do know, even though I don't know a lot of your music, I know you've worked with Martha Stewart. I know you love kids. I know you've been married for 20 something years. I know you have a nonprofit, and that's what I know about you." So he said, "Okay." He said, "I got to do more stuff to get on your radar, Miss Keisha." And then traveling. I've had the opportunity to travel the world. I've been to Qatar, Greece, Europe, and I have learned through traveling that everywhere I go, it's the same story. Everybody wants the same thing. They want a good education for their kids. They want a safe place to lay their head at night. They want food on the table and a roof over their head and good health care. And people are people, and so I'm just so honored. I tell people I feel like the most blessed woman in the world because of the life that I get to live.
That's pretty amazing. Next stop, Paris?
Yes. Next stop is Paris. So Paris has to redeem itself for me. The last time I went, it was not fun. we got into a crash. Our Uber driver got into a crash. They lost our luggage. We got caught in the rain.
Oh no. Oh my goodness. Yes, it does need to redeem itself then. Maybe this will be that trip for sure.
Yes.
So tell me about what's in your head. What's the prayer you pray? What do you do in the stands before and during the race?
Okay. So it's funny you ask that because I usually don't share. I'll tell people, but I'll share it with you. So in the stands, right before when Noah comes out, I always stretch my hands towards him and I pray and I ask God to give him feet with angels' wings. I ask God that nobody in the race gets injured, nobody false starts, and that he will see the fruit of all of his labor come to pass. And that is my prayer that I pray over him. And then I usually quote scriptures. And I just truly believe that he is walking in his gifting and he was created for this, and that lane that he's in before, and I know this sounds corny, but before he was created, that God knew on this date he would be in that lane. So that is literally his lane. Like he is exactly where he's supposed to be at the right time.
Wow. That's awesome. Yeah. Nobody believes in you like your mama, right?
I know. That's what my husband says. He's like, "You are definitely a mama."
Yeah, unless you've been there, it's hard to identify with that part for sure. So tell me about the fashion icon that Noah Lyles has become. I understand he wasn't quite like that as a child.
Girl, it was so ridiculous. I could not get the boy to wear lotion. I could not get him to wear matching socks. Nothing. So now that he's become this fashion icon, I'm like, but dude, you didn't even wear matching socks. I'm so confused. Where did this come from?
So you think
Yeah.
we're officially going to be able to refer to him as the fastest man in the world after this?
Yes, I do. I have watched him prepare on the track and off the track. And I think that's the difference. A lot of people prepare on the track, but he does so much work off the track with the nutrition, the recovery, the mental side. Yeah, I think he's ready. I'm so excited for him.
That's awesome. Keisha, thank you so much for your time. You have just filled my day with joy just from getting to talk to you. I feel like your joy comes through this computer screen where we're recording right now.
Oh,
So
thank you. So does yours. And I love, is that your living room in the
it
back or
is,
is that
yeah. Yeah.
I
You probably
I
saw my
like
dog
your
walk
living
by.
room. I saw your dog because at first I thought it was a background, and I saw a dog move. I'm like, that's either a really good
Yeah.
background or there's a dog.
Yeah. I just have this up on my kitchen counter with my living room behind me. And
And next time we come to Nashville, I'll let you know we're in town.
oh, please do. That would be so fun. I'm going to text you my number right now so you have it. Okay.
Okay, thank you,
Okay.
Jennifer.
All right. Talk soon. Bye. Keisha's enthusiasm and positivity is truly contagious. As you heard, she was very open about the role mental health issues have played in both her own life and in Noah's, and the importance that she places on mental well being. We had the opportunity to talk to Dr. Harsh Trivedi, a child psychiatrist and president and CEO of Sheppard Pratt. Well, we are so honored to actually get to talk with Dr. Trivedi today, and specifically about some of these topics that our listeners just heard Keisha Caine Bishop, the mother of Noah Lyles, talk about. Of course, a decorated Olympian, and we're enjoyed watching him in the Olympics and all of that. But there's a lot that comes with these high-profile professional athletes. One of my favorite things that Keisha said in the interview that I had with her is how she so wishes that having a therapist, someone to talk to, was just like having any specialist that's a doctor in our life, whether it was your dentist, your gynecologist, that she wished that it was normal to have a therapist. Tell me your opinion on when she spoke about that. That's so interesting to me.
Sure. Well, first of all, thank you so much for having me, and I agree that was a great interview. In terms of that comment, I guess what I would say is I think this is really the issue with the stigma with mental health is that, you know, we have no difficulty when someone has cancer. You not only get diagnosed, you let people know that you have cancer, and then your community, your friends, everyone comes around. Even if you think back about 10, 15 years, there used to be such stigma about, for example, breast cancer. All of that has changed so much, right? You think about even people that had HIV or AIDS, we've come so far as a society with that. Mental health is still one of these things where, for whatever reason, no one wants to openly admit that they're dealing with depression or anxiety or these things. But at the same time, and I'll just say for me, as a psychiatrist and a child psychiatrist, people feel very comfortable opening up. And what I will just say is the stories people share about how much better they get, how wonderful life is going, how much they've gotten better, and then they thank what their therapist has done, what their psychiatrist has been able to do. These professionals have just as much impact as your primary care doctor, your OBGYN, your pediatrician, and yet it's the thing that we don't talk about. And I think part of, I guess, what I would say is what she said is exactly the hope and the wish that I have, which is it should be just as normal as seeing any of those other professionals. And the reality is, mental health conditions actually impact more people across the globe than anything else. And it's the thing that leads to people not being able to finish school, not being able to be successful in life, not being able to be successful in relationships. So if we all just took better care of our mental health, think about how much better things could actually be. And I think that's
Right.
exactly where we need to get the conversation to.
Yeah. One of the things Keisha spoke about was that her own experience that she's had with depression and anxiety. Tell me a little bit about the genetic factors when it comes to those buzzwords like anxiety or depression.
Sure. So, one of the interesting things about issues with mental health is it's not, for example, the same as some types of cancer where they say, well, like this, if you have this gene, you're definitely going to get this type of cancer at some point. What we find true in mental health conditions, and I'll say, is that most of the studies that have been done have been looking at twins. So if you have identical twins, they should both have exactly the same genes, and you kind of follow them forward in life. And what they found is even for things that have the strongest genetic basis, so something like bipolar disorder, if you have two kids that actually have the same genes, you go forward, only about 60 to 70% of them, one will have bipolar disorder, the other one may not. For something like schizophrenia, that number goes down to 40%. And so, what I mean by that is your outcome isn't simply based on the genes that you have, it is also based on the environment that you grow up in, what life experiences you have, your temperament. And so, there's the nature part of it that she talked about in terms of yes, sometimes the apple doesn't fall far from the tree, but I will also say there's a huge nurture part of this as well. And I think that's an important piece because sometimes we as parents spend too much time, sometimes maybe beating ourselves up about what happens with our kids. And I will just say, and I think this is the glimmer of hope that I'm trying to provide, which is simply the fact that you have something doesn't mean you're automatically going to pass it on if it's a mental health concern. There are so many cases of that not being the case. But I think in her case, what was particularly important is if you know that it's there, why not make it easier for your child to get access to the right care and treatment earlier and better, to do things like go to the Olympics or
Yeah.
be everything that they can be.
Let's talk about some of the pressures these Olympic athletes face. In this series, we're talking to elite athletes who have excelled in their sports. Many of them are actually participating in the Olympics. We see the glitz, the glam, the pomp and circumstance, I guess you would say, as we're watching what's going on in Paris, but we don't
Yeah.
necessarily see behind the scenes and the pressure. And I was thinking just this morning before our interview that, it's one thing to excel in whatever you do and you don't want to let your family down or your team, but in this case it's the nation that's watching to see what you can do. I can't even imagine the pressure that's on these athletes shoulders.
Yeah, and it's not simply the pressure. What I would just add to that one, I think, is it's the pressure that's been building up over so many years. So I mean, to compete at that level, like truly from childhood, you've had to be practicing something, getting better at it, going through so many layers. And even when you look at the Olympics, I mean, I was watching the opening ceremonies, and you don't quite get the grasp of how many nations are there, how many athletes across all those countries are there. And for all of these events, for the one person that we say, oh, went home with this gold or even a silver or bronze, every other athlete went home without a medal. And they equally had that same struggle. They went through just as many things. And I think one of the things that's hardest, and what I loved about that interview was, when she said that she actually got together a group of the people that didn't make the Olympic team to allow them to grieve about the fact that they didn't make it. And I think that this is one of the things, which is there are thousands of kids that never even got to that point, right? And I think as a athlete, to get to that level, you have to be a perfectionist. You have to have that drive. You have to be kind of willing to sacrifice along the way. And there is tremendous sacrifice, but it all leads to this one moment that may or may not work out. And I think that's an incredible, it's like always being at the edge of a cliff. And I think she said it really well in the interview, which is the hardest part was not even all the moments of competition. It's what happens afterwards when you retire. If that's all your life has been about, has been that sport, and now you're not in that sport, how do you define who you are or who you're going to become as an adult? I think these are all the challenges that athletes have.
Yeah, it's really like you've put your identity into this. And
Yeah.
even I think, an average mom who's not raising an Olympian or an elite professional athlete can identify with that part. If I've put myself, I went through that recently. I put myself into being the mother of my children, and now, they need you a little less. They're older, they're moving on, and my identity
Yeah.
has been in that role as their mom. Or when I anchored the news full time, my role was as a broadcaster and a professional anchor, and that's how people knew me. And then when you're not doing that at a different stage in life, you're like, okay, wait a minute, let's go back to who I really am. So I can only imagine at that level that it's quite increased.
Agreed. And I think to do anything well requires time and energy. And I think, unfortunately, the problem is for things that take time to do, it means you don't have time to keep the other parts of your life healthy, right? And I think any of these pursuits, professional pursuits as well, it's kind of the how do you redefine yourself and how do you kind of figure out who you really are? Because I think you change as a person over time, having kids, and now that they're growing up, you're also a different mom than when you were before they were born. And so, kind of as you then figure that out, it also it's different because it's also social circles are different. What you find to be joyful or fun is different, but then it's also the how do you find balance? And that definition of balance is different in every stage of life.
Another thing I found interesting that I kind of just wanted to know more about, but she mentioned
Yeah.
how Noah was diagnosed with ADHD at an early
Ah,
age and how that goes in hand in hand. Sometimes you hear these three words together: ADHD, anxiety, and depression. What is the correlation of those three diagnoses?
yeah. So, what we tend to see is so in terms of when you tend to see things first, particularly in younger children, you're either going to see symptoms of ADHD or distractibility and attention, or you're going to see anxiety as kind of the first things that come up. What people have studied or what we know is for kids that have ADHD, about a third of them will end up having depression or depressive features at some point, and about 1 in 8 will end up also having some kind of anxiety issues as well. Overall, across the globe, anxiety is the most common illness that people have. So that is it is prevalent. It is something that occurs. And when you think about that in the context of being a elite athlete, it's like you may be anxious, but then you have to have these moments where you truly perform. And there's a part of you that kind of says, well, that doesn't make sense. But in actuality, it's the fact that you can be anxious and then focus that energy into your goal is kind of what is making you a better performer.
I think one of my takeaways from the interview and listening to that is exactly what you're talking about. But what I was reflecting on was that she made talking about emotional well being such an
Yes.
everyday part of their family and their life and putting the focus on it that during
Yeah.
2020, when Noah, and he talks about this in the documentary that's great, that's out, I think it's called Untitled, but he
Mhm.
talked about how in 2020 he realized he was struggling. Everything shut down for him. His identity was in himself as a runner. He wasn't able to compete. And
Yep.
I think that what I noticed from that is he sought help quickly and
Yeah.
recognized his own issue because he grew up with a mom who made it a key part of conversation.
Yeah. I think one of the things that has been great about COVID in particular, I think the silver lining is that I think so many people were struggling that it was okay to talk about. I think as a parent, something to keep in mind is I think that there's a phrase that I think is a particular one to bring to the table, which is it's okay to not be okay. And I think so much of our lives we spend trying to put out this perfect sense of who we should be or how we should talk, or and then people don't really know that inside we're struggling as much as we are. And I think particularly in safe spaces at home, at the kitchen table with mom, we have to be able to have some of those conversations, because if you can't really be yourself in some safe place, how do we get the help that we need? And I think one of the things I'm hoping, particularly that comes out of this COVID experience, is really that exact thing, which is it's okay to not be okay. It's okay to talk about your feelings, but more importantly, when you get help, there are wonderful solutions out there and wonderful ways to not live with all those horrible feelings.
One of the things I also thought was interesting, I thought the interview was so good, and I love that you watched it too. But she was delightful and so positive. But she talked about Noah removed himself from Twitter, which for athletes, is a big source of the way that they,
Yeah,
communicate and everything. But he was able to recognize the negative impact that comments and social media were having, that he just on his own removed himself from it. And she even said, "Why'd you do that?" And then she realized, okay, it's probably
yeah,
because I've taught him that,
right,
it matters, right?
exactly.
What you surround yourself with matters.
One of the things to keep in mind is I think sometimes as parents, we forget how much we teach our kids about social interactions. Who's a good force in your life? Who should you have? Or what is the definition of a good friend? And I think a little bit of the time the technology makes us feel like we don't know what to say or how to manage things. I think that's a great example of he knew what a good influence and what not a good influence are. Uh, that whole decision to turn off Twitter, there are people that take a social media holiday when things get particularly bad, or they say, you know what, I'm just not going to be on social media for the next 2 weeks and kind of say goodbye to folks for a little while. I think that's probably one of the healthiest things. And I think the other part of what I would just say, particularly with kids, is as a parent, if you're noticing some of these symptoms, or let's just say your kid is struggling a little bit more, and you can't put together those pieces, asking some of the questions about like, is there some kind of drama playing out on one of your social media apps? Is there something else that's going on? Who's making you not feel good about yourself? What are those images or what are those messages you're getting? And then really, I think he was able to figure that out. I think many other kids don't have that level of maturity even at the age that he's at. And so I think that's where mom can be particularly helpful in saying, well, think about your day and how it went. And so one of the things I do talk about, I think, which is helpful, is during the day, almost to keep like a mood diary of like, well, between 0 to 10, how good do you feel? How happy do you feel? How sad do you feel? If all of a sudden you notice this blip, we'll try to figure out, well, what just happened. And sometimes, and oftentimes, what it is I logged onto Facebook, or I went onto Instagram, or I went onto TikTok. I saw something, and all of a sudden, I don't feel so good. And if that's what's happening, maybe being on that social media is what's impacting your mental health.
Right. We hear the quote a lot, but it is so true that comparison is the thief of joy. I mean, it really
Agreed.
does, that whole comparison game, which is basically what
Yeah.
social media, causes us to do. I know you and I've talked about this before, but give me kind of the quick tips. I know that our moms listening worry about the impact of social media and their kids. What are some of
Yeah.
just the quick tips that you have to help us moms navigate the world of social media with our children?
First of all, you have to trust your gut. As mom, you know your child really well. If all of a sudden you feel like something is different, something's not right, go with your hunch. It's better to be wrong than to kind of be seen as like over worrying, or like, why are you bothering me about this, mom? I'm sure it
Right.
happens every day. It's okay. I think in terms of what to do about social media, what I would really just say is when you think about interacting with your child in social media, think about what you would do for any other interaction. So what I mean by that is if you have a child who's a 3, 4 year old, you're not just going to let them walk across the street themselves. But when it comes to social media, think about it and kind of translate that over. Well, if you don't let your 3 or 4 year old cross the street by themselves, don't let them go onto a digital device. Don't just give them their little tablet and say, well, go and play for hours on this thing. You have to supervise the work, right? As they get older, how do you manage what are appropriate conversations or discussions. So in that same way, before your child goes out on their first date, before they start interacting with other people, you have those conversations where you say, well, what does a good, healthy relationship mean? What is it? And I think in that same way, we have to have those same conversations about interfacing with digital media. So what does it mean to have responsible use of social media apps? What do you do if you kind of feel like you're in too deep, or something is happening that you don't feel comfortable with? How do you get help from your parent? And then I think the last part of this that I will just say is, one of the things I say earlier on for kids is when they first start using some of these things, the parent should also have the password so that you can kind of keep an eye on what's going on, make sure it's going well. As they get older, you have to let them go on by themselves and do these things. Sometimes moms like to basically have, get onto the social media platform themselves, have their own TikTok account, have their own whatever, and then maybe friend them or kind of keep an eye on what's going on from a little bit afar. And I think the biggest thing is, if you've brought up your kids well to understand good from bad, a good interaction, a bad interaction, a healthy interaction, an unhealthy interaction, how do you get them to translate those into the digital world as well? If it doesn't feel good in reality, it's probably not a good thing in the virtual world either.
I love the practical advice that you're able to offer to our listeners. This has been such a great conversation, and I do think that my favorite part of your message to moms is to give yourself a little bit of grace, right?
I definitely agree. I think that one of the hardest things about being mom is, there's always this belief that you have to get it right every single time. You don't want to do wrong by your kids, but as a parent, you have to know that you don't have all the data points and you can't predict the future. And so, in the moment, as a parent, as a mom, you're making the best decision you can in that moment with the set of facts that you have. And guess what? Not everything works out, but we have to be able to give ourselves grace and to learn and to move on from that, because otherwise, it can become so overwhelming. In the absence of time and all the data, it's hard to get everything right. And hindsight is always 2020, right? And so I think the biggest part of what I will just say is, your kids are doing as well as they are because you are there. It's not because you made the wrong decision or did something wrong along the way. What you're dealing with is really what's going on, but you're also focused and motivated and wanting to get to a better spot, which I think is, it's part of the human condition, but also evolution, that we have to kind of think about what does our kid need for that next stage in life, which is what you're always trying to do as a parent, is get them ready for that thing that they don't know is coming. But as they get older, they're super confident they know everything, and some things they just have to experience. But obviously, you want to protect them from the really bad things as mom, and I think that's a really important thing that gets done. But once again, without grace, it's hard to do this incredibly difficult and probably one of the most important jobs, which is to raise really good kids to be really good adults.
Well, thank you so much, and thank you for all the work that you do with Sheppard Pratt. We want to remind people that they can visit shepherdpratt.org, learn all about the resources. You guys are doing amazing work by providing valuable resources for parents when they have concerns. So we appreciate you, Dr. Trivedi.
Thank you so much, and thank you for having me.